All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Given all the information that has come out since the last video on these criminal charges and the corruption done by Luis Vieda and the people around Luis Vieda, I thought it'd be important to gather up the most recent information to put together a summary for everyone. Going to be looking at the various characters involved in this various fiasco, the roles each individual has played, and other stories that are playing out. Looking at the three primary areas of corruption. The first being taking the club's assets during the Penta year to financial benefit himself, and steal money in a certain way, inflating commissions on players to enrich himself and steal additional money, and committing securities fraud, again with personal benefit to himself and not the socios or the club. So let's kick off this crazy web that is Vieda, the impact he has the club in so many different ways. So we'll focus on part one. Looking at the Novo Banco situation. I know we've chatted about this in the past, so this is more of a bit of a recap here. But in short, what happened in that Penta year was an opportunity to make history for Benfica. Benfica was flush with money in the account. Everything was in good order, no major bills or debts due. And then this revelation earlier this year that somehow Luis Vieda became the second most indebted individual to this bank that went into financial insolvency. Such was the crisis and level of corruption that he was called in front of the government, in front of parliamentarians, in front of politicians to address the situation, because you had a bank on the verge of insolvency. They're basically forgiving debts. Debts were forgiven to Sporting and other clubs. Yet somehow Benfica took all their assets in that Penta year and instead of investing for the Penta, gave a charity act to this bank. And in that act, Luis Vieda had all his debt forgiven, making him the second most indebted individual to that bank. And he never had to pay back that debt, so he borrowed a ton from the bank, used Benfica's money to make a negotiation so the bank got some liquidity, and as a kickback, he basically protected himself. This is egregious in its own right, but as we found, there's far more worse things this guy has pulled off at the club. We look at the commission racket now, which in my opinion is even far worse. As bad as the devastating situation of the Penta was, and Luis Vieda enriching himself at the expense of the club's results, this one goes even far deeper. It looks at so many people involved, so many agents, so many directors, just so many people in the process of signing talent, financiers, cutting checks, and basically inflating the transfer value of players. There have been countless raids over the last couple of years. Those raids have led to judges approving wiretaps and led into even more discoveries. And one of the things that's most fascinating, anytime Benfica sneezes the wrong way, our rivals, Porto and Sporting, are all over us. Anytime we make the slightly wrong comment, massive comments from the Porto channels and so on. But ask yourselves, where's Pinto Costa? Why is it radio silence at Porto? And there's a very big reality that's setting in. Right before Luis Vieda's arrest, it was found a couple days beforehand, he had an emergency meeting with Pinto Costa. What was discussed, we don't know, but what we do know is that they've been silent as heck throughout this whole process. What we've seen now in the last few days from Perez, from Real Madrid, is a story of how Mendes and basically Pinto Costa would siphon money. They would inflate player commissions, agent commissions, and transfer money to their pockets. Remember, Luis Vieda is a Porto socio. Luis Vieda is very friendly with Pinto Costa, and it seems that he learned a lot of lessons from him. That is the same tactic that they found at Benfica. Think of Kyle Lucas, a free transfer, what an undisclosed agent fee. How much money went into an individual's pocket there. Think of all the signings that were dud signings for this club, likely for the sole reason of just taking 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and the estimate we keep hearing is possibly $100 million in total via various avenues. Thievery. This undermines everything. It means players were not signed for the club to win. Players were signed to enrich Luis Vieda, his son, his family. More shocking is the amount of directors that would have been involved in these player signings not questioning anything, being okay with them, not questioning the finances, the dollars, and things of the sort. This part really strikes home, and that kind of leads off to the next part we're going to get into here. If it couldn't get any more convoluted, I'm going to take something a bit more complex on the securities fraud side and elaborate just a little bit. In short, when you own 5% or more of a corporation that's publicly traded, according to regulators globally, you have to disclose certain activities when you're buying more or selling more. There are certain guidelines that you have to follow, certain laws. It's to avoid money laundering, which Lucian Fieta was involved in. It's to avoid criminal activity, which Lucian Fieta was involved in. But even going against the securities regulators was something he didn't fear, which he clearly did. And he worked with this Ray de Frange with all this criminal activity coming down, being well aware of the current situation. The police were likely getting close to filing charges, and there was a rush move to just dump their shares of Benfica, to get rid of their assets they had at Benfica, to cash in. They found an American by the name of John here, and an interesting character as a buyer. The big problem is just how the process they went about doing it. It was undisclosed. The general message from Benfica is Benfica as a club was unaware, Rui Costa was unaware, no one at Benfica has been fired for this because no one at Benfica was aware, except a very big but. This individual buying the shares has come out now and said that he met with the individuals at Benfica, met with the Ray de Frange, met with Lucian Fieta, went to the Luge, went to BTV to meet with people there. They give him a tour de Seychelles, management, tours the facilities, the structure, and understanding the museum and the history. And he has spent the last few weeks with photos of people in management at Benfica. So if this was an egregious crime at Benfica, so much so that Rui Costa, the now temporary sitting president, had to block the sale of the shares, no one's been fired at Benfica for their role in this. No one said anything. No one blocked it originally. If it wasn't for the police coming in and arresting Vieta, this transaction would be complete by now. And we'd be none the wiser. We'd be finding out after the fact as socios. It doesn't sit right, the current situation. The current situation that so many people at Benfica would have been aware of the situation with Banknov, the financiers of the club, would have been aware of the gap in money and the transfer situation. They would have been aware of this market securities situation. Yet silence from everyone at the club. Rui Costa has his hands full, and it is a very big challenge as we now talk about the idea of elections coming up in a few months. Right now the club is targeting the end of the year for elections, and now we enter these individuals, these various players here. Enter Matmuj is the one I want to start off with here. This man pressed for answers at Benfica. He's a Benfiquista and got crucified by the club. They rallied around Vieta and defended him down to the very last second when he was brought out in handcuffs. And now there's silence. This man's been justified. He was right. You gotta call a spade a spade. The man was right. Accusations are being thrown at him that he's helping Noronha Lopes. But the main issue that they had was that he wanted the votes counted. The club said they'd count the votes, and they never counted the votes from the last election. There was never a transparent process done. More likely that election was rigged. The level of criminal offenses, there's no way you can have confidence in the integrity of the election when there's that many issues happening at the club. The fans and socios got enough signatures for a General Assembly, they refused to allow it. So now it's Rui Costa's time to shine, man. He's got one chance to prove he's a Benfiquista. I never thought I'd question his Benfiquism, his status at the club, but he's fired no one. He's promised a transparent election, the counting of votes and debates, and that's what he should do. That's what we demand. That's the bare minimum. In a way, he has an opportunity to regain the faith of so many fans that love him, and their faith has been shook. So Man, I look forward to getting your guys' thoughts. Alright, this video is pretty much ready to post, ready to go. It was rendering. I'm checking out my tweets. The prior day, John Textor had responded to a couple of my tweets, and so I decided to take a look at his account. And he had spent the last 24 hours talking to be facetious. So much so that I decided, I don't want to post this without spending a little bit of time on him and some of the comments he's made to be facetious, just some high-level takes, and just to give you a little bit of background, because I'm not too sure how many people actually know this individual. Here in North America and Canada, the US, for a very long time, we could only get the Portuguese Liga via Fubo TV, which he was part of, and it gave us access to the game here in Canada. He left Fubo many years back after he was successful at that. If anyone's a fan of Tupac Shakur, the idea of Tupac being back on stage via hologram, that was one of his businesses also that did that. So he is an interesting individual. He knows how to make money. Now his interest in Benfica, it's fair to say, hasn't been received the warmest, or has been received with mixed messaging. Some fans welcome the idea of this. Just given all the chaos going on, some fans want nothing to do with it. What I find fascinating is his willingness to communicate with people even if they don't agree with him or they come at him with a little bit more aggressive comments, I guess you could say. One thing we can all agree on is the club for the last couple of years has not communicated with the socios. It's been a one-way street. They're dictating what things are to us. It's supposed to be a two-way street. We can communicate to the club via general assemblies. They did not like what we had to say as a fan base, and they ignored us. Lucio Fieta acted like he owned the club. Now, the difference with John Textor here is that he seems to be looking to be a partner of the club. He's not a businessman like Lucio Fieta who wanted to own and run the club. He's a man that wants to own a piece of it, but he's not going to be the president. He's not running for elections. He's not trying to be part of it. He's just trying to say, if I own a piece of this that's publicly traded shares, I think I can lend my expertise. I can make the club more efficient, and we're all going to be wealthier for it. So it's an interesting proposition. I find it more interesting the fact that he seems to understand the fan base more in terms of communicating to them. He knows we run the club. He knows he needs to talk to us if he wants to get something done. That's something we haven't seen from Rui Costa, Lucio Fieta, board of directors. Ronnie Lopes, to that extent, that's why he became so popular, is the amount of public appearances and individuals he'd speak to, and just he will talk to individuals. But it's funny, if you read some of these comments, they're hilarious. Some people attack him, but he's kind of spot on a few of these. I do think it's right for the club to just pause. I don't think we should rush into this. I could see him wanting to complete this, but at the same time, it's been shut down at this point by Rui Costa. But I do hope he maintains his interest, because let's just call it as it is. Looking at Santos and Lucio Fieta owning shares in Benfica, I don't like that. I want them gone. I want every aspect of them gone. So these are public shares not owned by the club. I'd rather them be owned by anyone else but them. So by default, he's an improvement already in that case. So that's it. That's the whole web of Confusão, because the Portuguese don't make things easy. A lot of these topics and items go far deeper. There's even more Confusão under layers of Confusão. So I actually had quite a lot of fun doing this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing it. As always, I enjoy your feedback and the comments. We'll do a live shortly. But yeah, carrega Benfica.